everybody, welcome back to Idiot-Proof Cooking. So today I'm going to be making the undisputed champion of the submarine sandwiches. I'm of course talking about the meatball sub. Rivaled closely by the assorted sub, but it is still better. And I will die on this hill and say it is the best submarine sandwich out there. Now today I'm going to show you how to make the actual meatballs, the sub roll, and the tomato sauce for it. So you're really getting a three-fer here. But anyways, let's get into making this. I think you're going to really like it. Okay, so we've got a lot to cover, so the first thing we're going to do is talk about making the sub roll. So get your stand mixer out, and into the bowl of your stand mixer add in 1 1/3 cups of warm water. I had mine heated to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. From there, pour in 2 1/4 teaspoons of dry active yeast, and then throw in a pinch of white granulated sugar to feed the yeast. From there, you're going to let it bloom for the next 5 to 10 minutes until it gets nice and foamy, at which point in time you're going to add in 3 1/2 cups of bread flour. Once that's in the bowl of the stand mixer, you're going to add in 2 tablespoons of white granulated sugar and then 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. What you're going to do then is affix the dough hook of your stand mixer, drop the head, and mix this on a medium speed for the next 4 to 5 minutes until everything combines together. Once that's done, stop the stand mixer for a moment, lift the head up, and we're going to add in a 1/4 cup of room temperature unsalted butter. And we're going to then drop the stand mixer's head again and mix all of the dough together for another 5-6 minutes until you get a nice smooth and supple dough like that. It's going to be pretty workable, like not overly hydrated. As you can see here, it's not like overly sticky. It's pretty good to work with. So like all the doughs we ever deal with, we're going to just knead this into a nice taut ball. Just work it back and forth with your hands along your working surface, and then get yourself a large mixing bowl, spray it down with some cooking spray or add in some olive oil, drop your dough ball in, swish it around in the olive oil or cooking spray so that it's covered, and then we're going to cover the bowl with some plastic wrap, and we're going to stick this in a warm dry spot for the next about 2 hours to double in size. I usually stick mine in my oven for that period. After about 2 hours, as you can see, the dough has risen quite nicely, so we're going to take it out of the bowl, but first we're going to give it a little punch to deflate it, which is always a lot of fun. So give it a punch, pull the dough out of the bowl, and then get yourself your kitchen scale so you can weigh your dough ball. Now the reason why I'm weighing this is because we're going to cut the dough into individual sized buns, so it's always good to know the total weight so that you can divide it up and make the buns an even size. Now my dough ball weighed about 36 ounces, so I'm going to cut 6 individual pieces of dough at 6 ounces a piece. Look at that. From there, I'm just going to take one of the dough balls and I'm going to start spreading it out first by hands, but then with a rolling pin until you get a nice circle of dough, and then I'm just going to roll the dough into a log shape and pinch the seam on the dough so that there isn't a seam when you're rolling this out. And then from there, I'm just going to roll out the dough with the palm of my hands, applying more pressure towards the end of the roll so that the bun tapers off. And you want to roll this out till it's about 10 to 12 inches in length until you have them all like that. Now as you can see here on the final one, I cut it in half and rolled them out into 2 smaller buns. I just wanted to try that out and see if it worked, and it did. So what we're going to do now is cover these rolls again with some plastic wrap and stick them back in the warm dry spot. Again, I'm using my oven, and we're going to let these rise a second time, this time just for an hour, until your rolls get nice and puffy and look something like that. We're almost ready to bake these, but first what we're going to do is get out a really sharp knife or a bread lame and slice a line down the center of our rolls about 1/8 of an inch in depth. And then we're also going to give these rolls an egg wash, so I just used 1 egg white mixed with some tap water. Just going to brush them all down, and then I'm going to sprinkle some sesame seeds over every roll. That's optional, but if you like sesame seeds on your roll, then sprinkle some sesame seeds on. From there, I'm going to preheat my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're going to bake these rolls for about 15 to 20 minutes until they come out nice and puffy and golden brown and look something like this. Look at how gorgeous those are. Man, those turned out nice. Now, like every bread we make on the channel, we've got to let it cool down for a few hours before we use them. So let's move on to the meatballs. Now to make the meatballs, we're going to use the holy trinity of meats. We're talking ground pork, ground beef, and some ground veal. And overall, we're going to use about a ½ pound of each. So that's like 2 packages for me. Then we're going to add in a cup of Italian breadcrumbs, pour that in. Then we're going to add in some spice, starting off with 3 tablespoons of dried parsley. Next in is a 1.5 tablespoons of dried oregano, and then another 1.5 tablespoons of garlic powder. Throw in a good pinch of kosher salt, and then a few twists of freshly ground black pepper. And then I'm going to throw in a cup of freshly grated Parmesan cheese, and then crack in 1 large egg to bind this all together, similar to how Sauron used the One Ring to bind the races of Middle-earth to his will. Little nerd moment. But anyways, you're going to mix this all together. Now I'm using my hands to mix it all together because it's just easier to use your hands. But mix it all together until it is nice and combined, and then we're going to form this into some meatballs. Now I'm making fairly large meatballs, so I'm just eyeballing it here. You can make larger or smaller ones. It's really up to you. As you can see here, I got 13 lucky 13 meatballs out of this. So what we're going to do now is head into the kitchen and cook these. So what we need is a large cast iron pan on a burner, crank it up to high, throw in some olive oil, and give the cast iron pan a few minutes to heat up because it takes a few minutes. From there, we're going to start adding in some meatballs, and we're going to sear them just for like 45 seconds to a minute per side. You're not looking to cook these all the way through, you just want to sear them to add some extra flavor to them, like this, as you can see here. So you can sear just 2 sides, you can sear all sides, that's really up to you. Really though, we're going to finish cooking these in the sauce. You're just looking to sear them, like I said. Once the meatballs are seared to your satisfaction, you're going to start pulling them out of the cast iron pan and set them aside for a few moments while we continue on and make our sauce. So first I'm going to throw some more olive oil down into my pan, and then I'm going to add in 1 large white onion diced up pretty finely, and we're just going to cook the onion for the next 3 to 4 minutes until it gets nice and fragrant and translucent. Once the onion has cooked a little bit, we're going to add in some garlic. So I'm going to use 3 cloves of freshly crushed garlic. Don't forget to scrape your mincer, and then just mix the garlic in for the next 45 seconds to a minute while it cooks. It doesn't take very long to cook. Once the garlic is cooked, we're going to add in a 6-ounce can of tomato paste, and we're going to mix that in with the onions and garlic for the next 2 to 3 minutes, giving it some time to cook and caramelize a little bit in the pan. Once that's done, we're going to add in a 28-ounce can of crushed San Marzano tomatoes, and then it's time to start adding in some spices, starting off with a few shakes of crushed red pepper flakes for a little bit of heat. Then we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of dried basil, 2 tablespoons of dried oregano, sprinkle that in. Next in is a tablespoon of white granulated sugar to cut down on the acidity of the tomatoes, a good pinch of kosher salt, and then a few twists of freshly ground black pepper. From there, you're going to mix all of the spices in with the sauce until it's combined, and then it's time to start adding in the meatballs to the sauce. So just get your meatballs and nestle them into the sauce. As you can see here, there was enough space for them all. And then we're just going to let these meatballs simmer in this sauce for the next 30 to 45 minutes, giving the sauce time to thicken up and fully cook the meatballs. About every 10-15 minutes, I'm just going to stir the meatballs in until the sauce is nice and thick and the meatballs are cooked like this. So let's go into the other room and start assembling. So let's pick out a nice bun here. Which one do I want to use? They're all pretty nice here, but we have to settle on one, so here we go. I'm just going to cut the bun down the center with my bread knife. There we go. Look at that. It looks great so far. And then I'm just going to get myself a wire rack, set in a rimmed baking sheet, and throw my sub roll on top of it here. And then let's go get the meatballs. Look at how gorgeous and big those are. Those are really big. Then we're going to start adding our meatballs and assembling the meatball sub. Now, due to the size of these meatballs, they're, like I said, they're fairly big. I'm going to throw 4 on my sandwich here, and then I'm just going to ladle on some of the extra sauce so that my sub sandwich is nice and saucy. Look at that. And then what I'm going to do is take the top part of the bun, and I'm going to rip out some of the flesh of it, for lack of a better term. I'm going to rip out some of the flesh of it so that it can sit properly atop the rounded meatballs. Now I'm going to throw some freshly grated Parmesan, a fairly good helping, on top of the meatballs, and for good measure, I'm also going to throw some on top of the top part of the bun. Once I've parmesaned it to my satisfaction, I'm going to add on some sliced mozzarella. Now you can use provolone if you want. Provolone is a bit better of a melter, but I like the taste of mozzarella better. So I'm going to add on a fairly liberal amount of mozzarella, and then I'm going to sprinkle the top part of my bun with some olive oil, and then last but not least, a little bit of garlic powder. Then I'm going to take this wire rack set in my rimmed baking sheet and throw it under my broiler set to high just for like 3 to 4 minutes. Gives the top bun some time to crisp up and melt the cheese. Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that a thing of beauty? Now, last but not least, for a little bit of flavor and contrast, some freshly diced parsley on top. This is one hell of a meatball sub. Look at how big it is. And let's throw the top bun on, and there we go. Look at this thing. It's going to be a handful, so let's cut it in half, because I couldn't possibly eat it as one whole thing. It's way too thick. But here we go. Let me just give you the cross section here. Look at those meatballs and how melty the cheese is, and it's so saucy. So let's go in for the taste test. I am excited. Look at this thing. Let's go in for the taste test. And yeah, with the first bite, oh yeah, was that good. The meatballs were so rich and flavorful. And granted, they were one hell of a mouthful because they were so big, but it was so good. And the fresh bun and the delicious sauce, these were absolutely perfect. I think the meatball sub is my favorite sub sandwich of all time, and for good reason. They are fantastic. So anyways, that is the end of the episode. I hope you liked what you saw here today. If you did, why don't you drop me a comment, a like the video, or even subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for watching 80 Proof Cooking. We'll see you again soon.